Everybody, Ted Forbes here, Art of Photography. We're going to do another Art of Photography extra this morning. The whole idea behind these, they're not part of the main podcast. We're just going to throw up a camera and go and see what happens. Very spontaneous, not as prepared, not as thought out, but I can address kind of some different things here. We'll put them up on YouTube and see what happens. Sunday morning here in the studio, and I was kind of thinking about some stuff that I was working on today, and I had a question that kind of I think comes up from the last podcast, or the last Art of Photography Extra episode that we did, but somebody was asking me about, and this was in the Flickr group I think, on personal style, and how do you develop a personal style as a photographer, as an artist. And that's a really tough question because I don't think that's it's certainly not an easy thing to do. It's something that comes with maturity, it comes with time, it comes with experience, probably comes with age. I don't feel like I'm there yet. I don't feel like I have a personal style. But this got me thinking, and I had a discussion with somebody earlier this week. And what's interesting is, if you think, and there's kind of two schools of philosophical thought on this. In Western cultures, particularly the United States, I think particularly Europe, we are kind of raised in a culture that is very celebrity-driven, that really celebrates the individual. I think, particularly my childhood, growing up in the late 70s, early 80s, that, the people that we tend to put on pedestals are actors, musicians, especially nowadays you have the Paris Hiltons of the world who really don't do anything, but somehow become famous at it. But we celebrate that, this uniqueness, this individuality, a personal style, so to speak. Whereas I think you contrast that with an Eastern philosophy where people are raised to realize that they're part of a culture and part of a bigger picture of things. And I think that's a really important thing to step back and consider for a minute. Because I think when you look at photographers or artists just in general, and people who are really successful at this, I think you see a common thread that there is almost always this realization, whether it's conscious or not with the artist, that their work, and I'm talking about people who are very successful at this, it comes in this bigger cultural picture of things, okay? And I'll give you a couple examples. Like, I've talked a lot about Hiroshi Sugimoto lately, and if you're not familiar with his work, Google him, go look him up. It's incredible, and I think that there's certainly an individual voice there with Sugimoto, and obviously being from Japan, he also has this tremendous nod and respect for the things in photography and art that came before him. And I think that's what defines him as an artist. I think even with the blurred out architectural photos, I think there's certainly a nod to different philosophy movements, to Impressionism. So both aesthetically and conceptually, I think there's that nod back, and there's that piece of the bigger picture that he stands out with, but is also a part of. And it's been a common 20th century ideal in art, particularly to try to divorce oneself from the past and redefine what is art. If you look at some of the things that came out of New York, particularly in the 60s, 70s, 80s, people like John Cage, Robert Rauschenberg, Andy Warhol, there was this definite redefinition, especially with John Cage's case, of what could be defined as music. He was a composer. He wrote a piece that's just silence. Okay, well, it's a little silly. But even that, in that divorce from the past, there's still kind of a common acceptance and a part of a bigger picture, part of a cultural movement, certainly on a local level, being part of that New York movement that was going on at that time. But I think on a bigger picture level, just this historic movement, there's a place in history. It's a line that he's a part of. And whether or not he consciously went for that or realized it, I think that's what happens. And I think that's what separates somebody from being kind of an amateur artist to just doing whatever, to somebody who consciously kind of considers a lot of these things in this place in time. If you go to a museum and look at work, if you find compilation books, and when you look at curated types of content where these things are grouped, not so much from the individual standpoint, but from a cultural standpoint, I think you see that more. But these photographers that I'm talking about, Hiroshi Sugimoto is one of them. I think Tom Baril is another favorite of mine. That he does these pinhole still lifes, but they have a definite nod to Robert Mapplethorpe, who had a definite nod to like Greek and Roman classicism, particularly with sculpture when he did kind of some of his nudes. And somebody even like another great photographer who I've not ever talked about on the show, but Abelardo Morell, who is a Cuban-American photographer who works out of Massachusetts and he teaches up there. And he did a series of work where he was photographing things that were, to teach a basic photography class, that, optic phenomenons, visual phenomenons, things like that. He was trying to capture some of these. So like, what a pinhole does, what camera obscura does, things like that. And he successfully did this in a way that really has a nod almost back to Greek and Roman philosophy, in a sense. I think it's just brilliant stuff. And you know, I think because of that redefinition of what we came through, you know, especially in the 60s, you know, I don't think that there's really anything that hasn't been done. And I've had teachers who've said that too, and I really kind of agree with that. I think it's really hard and really chasing a rabbit down a hole to try to do something that is complete divorce that's never been done anywhere and still keep it aesthetically in line, because I think everything crazy's been done. But it's how you interpret these things. And anyway, but the whole point today is talking about, you know, personal style and how that fits into a bigger body of work culturally, historically, etc. So anyway, that's about all I got for today. Just some thoughts, basically. Also been shooting on the Great Wall that I showed you in the last episode this week. And this whole thing kind of came out of, you know, my feeling that, you know how it is, we all get busy, and then all of a sudden I realize, you know, here I have a podcast on photography and I never take pictures. So kind of this at various points in my life has come along and become the sketchbook cam. And for whatever reason, it kind of challenges me to think a little bit differently, because there's so many heavy restrictions on this thing, and to kind of snap out of some of those, you know, silent ruts that you have as an artist. So anyway, I'll be doing some more, maybe another art of photography extra on this, and I'll show you some of the pictures I've been taking too, and posting on Flickr and other places. So anyway, that's about all I got for today. This has been Art of Photography Extra, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.